Call this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, June 8th, 2020. This is a Prescott City Council voting session. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you all today. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have any announcements?
I just wanted to share with you all that a couple Fridays ago we opened our splash pad at Granite Creek next to the Hilton Garden Inn, which is such an excellent addition to our recreation opportunities, especially for our younger families. So if you're interested, definitely check it out. You can park in the Hilton Garden parking lot. That's public parking as well. And then you can walk over, or you can park at Granite Creek Park and take a little stroll under the bridge. But it's been super busy and really cool to see kids out there playing now that school's out for the summer. So thank you, Joe, to your staff for making that a reality. And it's just another great addition to that downtown corridor. And I'm really excited to see some opportunities for kids and young families in the area. So really proud of that accomplishment.
Great. Thank you. All right. Today we have an invocation by Chaplain Charlie Kuhn and then Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Rusey.
Thank you, Mayor. Precious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for joining us today. We ask that you would be here, give us wisdom and guidance as this committee, this council, does the business of our city. We just thank you now. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you, Chaplain. Let's do a roll, please.
Mayor Mangarelli,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Scholl,
Here.
Councilman Blair,
Yes.
Councilman Good,
Here.
Councilmember Rusing,
Present.
Councilman Sischka,
Here.
and the record will reflect that Councilman Tenney is excused from the meeting.
All right. Very good. We do have one proclamation, but the recipient is not here at the moment. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and move forward with the consent agenda, and we'll come back to proclamations here in a little bit if he shows up. So let's do a consent agenda. Any member want to pull something from consent?
Yes, I do, Mr.
Yeah, go
Mayor. I'd like to pull A, and I believe B has been removed from the consent agenda by Public Works.
We have to vote to continue
Yeah,
it.
it needs to come off. So you
B, if it hasn't been removed, E,
B.
F, and H.
So I heard A, B, E, F, and H. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Entertain a motion.
So what are we doing with B?
Did you pull item B?
I did pull it if it hasn't already been removed by Public Works.
It hasn't. The agenda's been published. We can't remove an item without
Yeah.
continuing it.
I'd
Okay.
gotten an
So she
email.
pulled all those items.
Okay.
Okay.
Then I move that we approve consent agenda items 7C, 7D, 7G.
I'll second that. We have a motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Very good. All right. Let's start with item A. Councilmember Rusey.
Thank you. It's just a minor correction. It involves page 8. The $200,000 number, I would like to have
Page
it
8 of which minutes?
page 8 or 22.
Which minutes?
The minutes from 8/6/8. I mean, the minutes from 2 weeks ago.
Okay, there's
You
like
got executive.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. From the let's see.
Budget, workshop, voting meeting.
From the voting meeting.
the May 25th voting meetings.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. It's item F. Approval of COVID-19 vaccine administration reimbursement for Spectrum Healthcare Group and Dignity Health. YRMC in the amount of $200,000, and I would like the minutes corrected to reflect that it's actually $100,000 each, just to prevent any confusion. Thank you.
Anything else on the minutes? Councilmember Wilson, anything else on the minutes?
That's it for me.
Okay, entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve consent agenda item 7A.
Second. As amended.
Yeah, as amended here. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Okay, item B, Councilmember Rusing.
Item B, 7B, is concerning the city contract with Golder Associates. And it's the Big Chino water study. And I had received an email from Public Works saying that the contract wasn't quite ready, or am I mistaken?
Councilmember Rusing, I think I can handle this, Craig. There is a desire by Public Works to have further discussions with the vendor about the price. And instead of approving the price, we'd like to be able to go back to the drawing board a little bit. Is that correct? That's what I understood from Gwen yesterday.
Yeah, we did not approve or submit the memo. We were not ready for it to be on the agenda.
So it would be better just to wait and make a determination at a later date.
Okay. What's the best thing to do with this item at this point, John?
I think you should just move to continue the item to a date in the future, because there is no date certain.
Okay.
And that way it'll be on the record as continued.
So I move to continue item 7B.
Second.
Motion and second, please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Item E, Councilmember Rusing.
Thank you. Item E is concerning a lot split and in the Murphy's Fifth subdivision. And I just had some questions because there's no, in my packet, there's no address, and I couldn't figure out exactly where this property was. I have a few maps that didn't really, I think one of the streets might be Campbell, but I just think it would be helpful to have a street address. And I also wanted to know if there was any, if this was done administratively, and if there was any public input from the neighbors, and what the zoning is on these lots currently and going forward if they are split, and then who owns the triangle that's supposed to be added. Just some general questions. Thank you.
Sure, not a problem. Tammy DeWitt, community planner with the city of Prescott. So this is the current, the original plat. It was from 1915. This is the property in question. It was two separate parcel lots, and at one point they were combined. The triangle in question is like right here. It was not part of this subdivision in the 1915. So here's what we have now. This actually is all one taxing parcel at this time. So the assessor's office has combined these parcels for taxing purposes. So what this proposal is proposing to do is to incorporate, this is owned by the same property because it's already part of the property for taxing purposes. So they want to expand the subdivision boundary to include this triangle. And this is what it is right now, the parcel, and this is that little triangle. So what they want to do is, this is the property right now, and they want to split it in half, which is allowed per the zoning. It has enough property. And then this will also change the subdivision boundary to include that triangle.
So what is the zoning?
It is multifamily, multifamily medium density. It allows for has a manufactured home overlay on it. So their idea is they're going to put two manufactured homes here, which is allowed per the zoning district.
Okay.
So they meet all our development criteria. It is administrative. There's no public comment because this is allowed by right for them to do that, and then to amend the boundary. The only reason this is coming before the council is because they're amending the boundary of the subdivision.
And just for the public record, what is the street address of this property? Do you know?
412 Campbell Street.
412 Campbell. Okay.
Yep.
All righty. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We'll make sure to have that in the future.
Entertain a motion on this item.
Mayor, I move to approve item 7E.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Item F, Councilmember Rusi.
Thank you. Item F is about dedicating a portion of a roadway to the city. And I was just wondering, it's the name of the road is Ridgewood Drive. And how many linear feet are we taking, and why was it out of our jurisdiction and then back in? I was just wondering how that happened.
Certainly. I'm George Worley. I'm the planning manager for the city. This property, along with all of Enchanted Canyon, on the drawing up above, I'll point to. So Enchanted Canyon subdivision was over here. Enchanted Canyon was platted originally with private streets, and at the time of Enchanted Canyon coming into the planning process, these 4 lots were also platted by a separate owner with a private street. The streets in the preserve at Prescott to the east were public streets. About 10 years ago, a little less than 10 years ago, Enchanted Canyon came back to the city and requested their streets be dedicated to the public, and the city council agreed. And at the time, the city and the property owners on both sides, the developer of the preserve and the developer of Enchanted Canyon, tried to get hold of this property owner to incorporate those streets at the same time. That property owner was unavailable, missing in action. No one could get hold of him. And eventually, the city moved ahead and accepted the streets in Enchanted Canyon. So public streets outlined in red, currently a 410-foot gap of pavement that remains as an easement. The properties are owned by separate property owners now with intent to develop someday. The city's situation is basically that we have a gap in streets. We plow the street now. It's subject to the city's design requirements. It was built per city standards. It's just a matter of trying to clean up an unexplained 2-lot gap in a street that was originally, it made sense when the streets to the west were private streets, but no longer make sense.
Okay. And so it sounds like we just don't really have any kind of a policy as to having a development, whether it has private or public streets. I mean, do we have a policy where if it's a connector, an arterial, it's okay, it should be public, but if it's just like this street to a private subdivision with really no outside traffic, then we don't have a policy regulating that. We're kind of going back and forth here.
We have allowed public streets or private streets depending on development patterns. If it's a main collector roadway, we'll want public control over it. But in streets like these, it was not uncommon at the time for the streets to be private. In this particular case, it would have made sense for all of it to come in as public streets at the same time. But the original development had private streets in both of these subdivisions.
And then they decided not to have private streets.
And they requested the city accept the maintenance and operation of the street.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
Entertain a motion on this item.
Mayor, I move we approve consent agenda item 7F.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
And item H, Councilmember Rusi.
Yes, this is concerning our Community Develop Fire and Public Works Department software. It's a pretty big number, $161,000 and change, and I was just would like to have some clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, to what aspects would you like to be clarified?
I'm particularly interested in the community development, and is any of this software important in the permitting process?
It's absolutely critical. Meaning if this software disappeared right now, Bryn, Public Works, Fire would be back to paper and pencil for permits, inspections, disposition of inspections, disposition of permits. It'd be like not having oxygen essentially for their business. You can do it a different way, but it's not going to be pleasant or enjoyable, and that's if you don't assume that there's a lot of building and activity going on. So essentially it's what they use to conduct their day-to-day business with the public, with developers. That's exactly what it does.
Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve consent agenda item 7H.
So, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
All right, let's move on to consent ordinance, please.
Adoption of ordinance number 2021-1762, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the acceptance of a public drainage easement agreement from Yavapai Hills Homeowners Association and authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said acceptance, and adoption of ordinance number 2021-1764, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the acceptance of a public sewer easement agreement from Granite Dells Estates 2 LLC and authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said acceptance.
Entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to adopt consent ordinance items 8A and 8B.
So I have a motion and second. Any discussion on these items? If not, let's please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Item 9, please.
Public hearing and consideration for a new Series 11 Hotel Motel liquor license application from Andrea Dahlman Lakowitz. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Applicant for La Quinta Inn and Suites, location 4499 Highway 69. The application fees have been paid. The signs have been posted for the required 20 days. Staff has reviewed the applications and determined that they are in compliance, and no public comments have been received.
And do you have an applicant here, Sarah? Do you know?
I don't believe we do.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion then.
Mayor, I move to close the public hearing.
Motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Mayor, I move to approve recommendation for liquor license number 148608 for a new Series 11 Hotel Motel liquor license for La Quinta Inn and Suites located at 4499 Highway 69.
Second. Motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you. Item 10A, please.
Adoption of resolution number 2021-1777, approving transfer of certain fiscal year 2021 budget appropriations.
Thank you, Sarah. Mayor and Council, Mark Woodfill, Budget and Finance Director. Throughout the year, Council has had projects and different purchases, and as we have addressed each of those, at the time we pointed out that they weren't specifically budgeted in the budget. At some point, Council has to authorize the transfer of appropriations, so obviously that's why we make it clear when those things happen. There's a list of the items here. We can run through them really quickly. Obviously, there was something to do with the new city hall this year. You may have remembered something about that. That was an unbudgeted item. We need to transfer appropriation for that. We had revenues, sales tax revenues were above our projections, our conservative projections. So there's additional funds in the PSPRS tax fund that need to be transferred to PSPRS to reduce the liability. So we need to move appropriation for that. There was allocation of the surplus from the CARES funding, original CARES funding and the general fund related to the Center for the Future and the Granite Creek project and the North Prescott plan and the tourism and marketing. So we have that movement. Fire department had significant staff off and had overtime exceeding budget levels, so we need to move appropriation for that. And as always, we have some grant funds that came in that we didn't specifically know or exceeded where they were, so those are in there as well. So what this resolution does is it transfers appropriation from the contingency, if you will, to cover these things that came up during the year that council approved at the time, with the exception of like the overtime and some of the operational things, but the grants and the other things. With that, I'd be glad to answer any specific questions.
Thanks, Mark. Questions, comments from the council?
Yeah, I have one. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
On the exceeded PSPRS dedicated tax, so we're talking about the additional 443.75 tax that came in over and above our projected
Correct.
Collections.
Yes.
So
and all of these are just movement of appropriation. They're not movement of cash.
Well, those are very I wouldn't say exciting, but they're certainly unexpectedly valuable revenue from that, and that certainly helps pay down our liability a little bit better.
Yes, it does.
$6 million is it's a good number.
Yes.
It is a good thing. Anything else from the council? Public comment?
No, Mayor.
Entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move adoption of resolution number 2021-1777, approving transfer of certain fiscal year 2021 budget appropriations.
Second.
Motion and second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you. Item 10B, please.
Adoption of resolution number 2021-1778, adopting the tentative budget for fiscal year 2022 and setting the public hearing for the final budget, expenditure limitation, and tax levies for the city of Prescott.
Thank you, Sarah. Mayor and Council, Mark Woodfill, Budget and Finance Director again. This is the budget that we looked at on the budget workshops that were held on the 25th and 18th, I believe, in May. The years run together. They are exactly what we looked at. Nothing's been added except for, as we talked on the 25th, we talked about adding an additional $10 million in contingency for unforeseen projects related to grants, related to the infrastructure, potential federal grant, related to other things that might need to be acquired that weren't specifically identified. And again, if things don't come up and council doesn't authorize it, these monies don't get spent, but city budget is a legal limit and you cannot exceed it. So with that, the 22 budget will be $238,444,604. With that, I'd be glad to answer any specific questions. Oh, and also just as a reminder, today we're adopting tentative budget. This authorizes the publishing of this budget legal document for 2 consecutive weeks. It sets the public hearing for the 22nd of June for the budget, the alternative expenditure limit, as well as the property tax levy. Let's close this real quick. The legals that will be published are on this screen in front of me. Let me put them up here for you. Several schedules. They're out there on the website. They were put out on the website yesterday on our legal document website, as well as our current year project website. Schedules A through G, some very interesting schedules that deserve a look. What will be published is Schedule A here, which is hard to see in this form and not much easier in the paper, but it is a lot easier when you pull it up on our website. It does show the flow of resources and the total budget. It is a summary of the budget as a whole. Also in there is our property tax levy, comparing one year to the next. As you can see, property taxes, as we talked about, is going down. And then we have our other revenues other than property taxes, transfers, and debt services in there as well. I won't bore you going in detail through all this since we did a lot of this during different things. Departmental schedules. This is kind of an interesting schedule, which was added 2 or 3 years ago. It actually shows personnel cost, personnel counts by departments, and total cost by category. Interesting numbers out there. With that, I'd be glad to answer any specific questions.
Questions, comments from the council? Councilman Good.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize again this additional $10 million of potential contingency funding is not actually a budget expenditure. It's just a set aside so that if and when federal or even state, I imagine, appropriations for grants or other matching fund opportunities, or I think the federal, forget the acronyms for that. It's not CARES. It's the new appropriations.
ARPA.
So if that does occur, then at least we have the option to either adopt it and use it or not. And if we don't, then that contingency will expire at the end of the fiscal year budget?
Absolutely. All contingencies in Arizona expire at the end of the year without specifically being carried forward.
So I think that just needs to be reemphasized again to the public that we're not adding more expenditures. We're just giving ourselves the option of potentially accepting revenue from an outside source and then being able to decide if we want to be able to use it appropriately.
Yes, definitely well said, Councilman. It is important. Like I said, this is a limit. Without capacity, council would not be able to act on any of that. So it is important.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'd like to say something.
Yes, sir.
You know, I think that Councilman Good has a good point. Yeah, good point, huh? Yeah. I think what people need to know is that they're not being taxed to make up that additional room in the budget.
Absolutely. Along with that additional $10 million, it's a appropriation, but there's also a contingency revenue. So if there's no revenue comes about, there's no room for that expense. Again, it is more of a legal compliance with state law and our city charter.
Thanks, Mayor.
Yep. Anyone else, council? Public comment?
No, Mayor.
Entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 2021-1778.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 6-0.
All right. Item 10C.
Legislative update.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Tyler Goodman from the City Manager's Office. I'll pull this up. There we go. It's been a busy 2 weeks in the legislature from the last time that I spoke to you. They have temporarily adjourned until Thursday. However, and that's mostly because they couldn't find a compromise on the budget. However, yesterday, the House called their members back into session to see if they could pass 2 budget bills that really had to do with the question of, can we get a flat tax implemented, the changes that we've been talking about for the last month or two. They could not. Both bills failed 30-30. One of the bills called for a $1.9 billion tax cut, and one bill included state shared revenues for cities and towns increasing from the 15% level to the 17% level. As we know from the Jim Rounds economic report, the league is really looking for anywhere between 18 and 19% to increase that shared revenue. That is projected to essentially hold cities harmless, or to a degree that's pretty palatable, I think, for most people. The estimates that came out yesterday show that even at 17%, the loss to Prescott would still be about $1.6 million. And you should be asking the question that seems very similar to what it was at 15%. The league and the legislature received updated data from the governor's office showing that there is an estimated growth of income tax in the state of 5% over the span of this implementation. So taking that number into account, they produced that number of about a $1.6 million hit if it were to remain at 17%. Now, the House couldn't get it done yesterday. They adjourned until Thursday. The Senate comes back on Thursday. We will see if there's any movement to increase that percentage. The league shared a few options of what they think could happen. The legislature might pass a skinny budget to fund the most vital services of the state government, so it doesn't completely shut down after June 30th. And then they may come back in the summer sometime to work on a more detailed budget. There's some talk about a partisan tax package that would be more of a $1 billion tax cut, pay off some state debt, but that would still require a hold cities harmless aspect. And another option could be a $500 to $600 million tax cut, but then they would consider some tax rebates to the Arizona taxpayers, or maybe some other alternatives that just haven't been brought up yet.
So, Tyler.
Yes.
Yeah, this is very interesting. So the league, in terms of lobbying on our behalf, has never taken any issue with the mechanism. It's really just holding us harmless. And when you and I talked to Nick Ponder, it was a week or so ago, I can't remember, We were suggesting that the 18% would be kind of our floor, right? Our kind of, that's as low. That's where we'd want that percentage or higher.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And that's what they're still pushing for.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions for Tyler on the budget? Anything else in your?
Just one other bill we've talked about, motor vehicle dealers. This would give that exemption to those who are coming from out of state to purchase a vehicle. They would not have to pay sales tax. There was a proposal from the sponsors that they claimed would hold cities harmless, but it doesn't. It just kind of moves language around. And so obviously the league, cities are still opposed to this. This is back burner compared to the budget. We will see where this ends up once the budget comes back into discussion. But with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Very good. Thanks, Tyler. Any questions, comments for Tyler? Okay. Thank you. Our quote comes from Ronald Reagan today, President Reagan. Government's first duty is to protect the people, not to run their lives. This meeting is adjourned.